So, here's something that comes up a lot is what is the ideal form of government? What should we have? Um, a lot of people probably won't like this, but probably the ideal form of government for human beings in our current state of development is probably socialism. So, why doesn't socialism work? If it's the ideal form of government for human beings, why doesn't it work? Well, socialism fails, and it will always fail, and it will fail every time, for the same reason that capitalism will always fail, and democracy will always fail, and tyranny will always fail, and authoritarianism will always fail, and communism will always fail. There's nothing wrong with any of those individual forms of government. All of them, in their pure original forms, should, in theory, work fine. So why don't they? Well, it's very simple. Greed. Once you inject greed into the equation, every one of those forms of government inevitably fails, including capitalism, including socialism, communism, authoritarianism, democracy, etc. They always fail once greed enters the equation. That's like Superman's kryptonite. Well, greed is the kryptonite of any pure ism. Any pure form of government will always fail as a result of greed. The optimal form of government in the presence of greed is probably what the United States originally had, and that is a constitutional republic. A constitutional republic is literally a mix of all of them. A proper form of government must have socialist aspects, it must have communist aspects, it must have democratic aspects, it must have authoritarian aspects, and it must have capitalist aspects. You have to have all of them. Think about how our government is supposed to function. Okay, we have socialism. Okay, we have public property. We have we should have universal health care. We have food stamps. Okay, we also have communism. We have public utilities, we have public roads, we have taxes. Okay, that's essentially communism. We also have some aspects of democracy. We vote, we protest. Okay? We elect our officials, we have representatives. We also have authoritarianism, the Constitution. Literally, the Constitution is authoritarianism. It is an ironclad, well, supposed to be, ironclad supreme law of the land that says this is how it is to be done, and nobody is allowed to violate this constitution. Sorry, just drank some milk. And contrary to the bullshit people like to spread about it being a living document, which is bullshit, by the way, it is almost a non-living document. It's almost granite. All right, the Constitution is explicitly designed to be very hard to change. Because, you want to make sure, do you really want to do this? Because once you do it, you can't go back. So make sure you're really, really sure you want to do it, which is why it's so hard to change. And then we also have capitalism. Capitalism gives us drive, gives us motivation, allows us to profit from our work and effort. The problem we have today is you can actually see a capitalist system failing. Our country is failing. We are not a capitalist country anymore. Contrary to what people think, we do not function on capitalism. We need to, we should be, but we're not. What we're functioning on is socialism. Right now, the United States is a socialist country for the most part. If people are going to scream and yell, and I don't care, it's the truth. We are operating under socialism. It's just not socialism for the people. It's government corporate socialism. Another word for that is cronyism. Okay? There are some aspects of capitalism left, just like there's some aspects of communism, socialism, and democracy left. But for the most part, we are operating now under a cronyist system. What I call cronyism. I think they actually use that word for something. It actually has a meaning, but the meaning I'm using is what we have right now. It's corporate government socialism. Corporate government welfare. And that's a problem. The problem is any pure form of government, especially one that's good for the people, meaning the larger the group of people a government system is good for, the more prone it is to failure. Because you have so many links in the chain, and any of those links start to fail, the system fails. And the primary failure point is the people. It's called vigilance of the population. Benjamin Franklin said it best, is that a message popped up that confused me for a second. Sorry. Benjamin Franklin said it best when a lady asked him, what have you given us? After they'd ratified the Constitution and whatnot. Benjamin Franklin replied, I'm paraphrasing this, I probably don't got the words exactly right, but we have given you a republic for so long as you can keep it. He is literally telling the people that all of these systems will fail if the people don't maintain vigilance and enforce the system that's in place. That's why we have a First Amendment and a Second Amendment. That's why those are 1 and 2. Because the idea is we have to maintain the form of government we have. We're not supposed to have a pure socialist or a pure communist or a pure democratic society. I mean, democracy is one of the worst forms of government you could possibly have. It's bad. I mean, democracy is right up there with tyranny. In fact, that's why they call it tyranny of the majority. When you have a democracy, all you have to do is manipulate the majority of the people, or the largest chunk of the people, to vote the way you want, and you can get them to vote themselves anything they want. I mean, if you want to see an almost pure democracy actually functioning today, just look at Congress. I mean, Congress is a mini democracy that's actually functioning today. They vote themselves anything they want. How's that working out for you? Not working out so great, is it? So the people in charge want to divide and hyperpolarize the people, because the last thing they want is an educated, driven population motivated to do what they need to do to make things work correctly. They want us going at each other's throats. They want us divided. You filthy liberals, you filthy conservatives, whatever the hell those things mean. You filthy Democrats and you filthy Republicans and you filthy this or that. And they want us hyperpolarizing at each other's throats, because then it's very easy for them to manipulate us and get us to vote them anything they want, contrary to what would be good for us. And that's how that kind of system works. I mean, they all fail the same way. I mean, I see the problem, but I don't see how to fix it. The only fix is for the people to do their job and stay vigilant and compel the government to do as they're told, instead of the other way around. But this also requires people to let go of selfishness. A lot of the times we polarize and vote the way we do for our own petty self-interest instead of the interests of the entire whole. We vote for people who claim to want to do the things that we want, claim to want to do the things that we agree with, whether that be political things or religious things or whatever. And that's the wrong way to vote. The right way to vote is to recognize what is best for the country as a whole and what supports the Constitution as a whole. And that requires us to let go of things we may or may not want or may or may not like. And that's hard for us to do, especially in our hyperpolarized state. I mean, we live in the most advanced society this planet has ever seen, to the best of our knowledge. The whole point of having civilization, the whole point of having society, is to maintain the whole. I mean, in reality, I should be dead. In an animalistic, not any sort of democracy or socialism or communism or authoritarianism, just a pure raw form of society, I should be dead. I was born blind. But we have an advanced society that allows us to support people who would normally die. Okay? 17 operations later, they were able to fix one eye, so I can see. Without our advanced society, that would not have been possible. Okay? People who are born crippled, people who become crippled later in life. I mean, that's the entire point of having a civilization, of having a society. Socialism's not bad. Communism is not bad. Even mild forms of authoritarianism are not bad. Just like capitalism and democracy are not bad. But if you take any one of those in their purest form, they become bad. So you need a proper mix of all of them. Do you agree with taxation? Any taxes at all? Well, then you agree with socialism and communism. That there's in a pure system without socialism and communism, then you wouldn't have any taxes, right? But taxation is socialism and communism. The question is, do we use that tax money intelligently, efficiently, and equitably for society as a whole? Or do we funnel the money where our greed wants us to put it because of our own personal beliefs or the illusion of our own personal beliefs that are manipulated by the people in charge? I mean, just look, we've spent, what, $8 trillion on this pandemic so far? How much of that went to the people? I mean, if I can find it, I'm going to post a link in the description showing the wealth gap in this country. And I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what kind of system you think is proper or equitable. If you think that kind of a wealth gap is proper and reasonable, you're part of the problem. I mean, there's no nice way to say it. If you think that's okay, you're part of the problem. And we need to stop being part of the problem, and we need to start working towards solutions. We should have universal health care. There is no excuse in our multi-trillion-dollar advanced global planetary-wide society that we should have any people not getting medical care, any people being bankrupted for medical care, and one single person hungry. There's no excuse for it. The amount of food the United States wastes alone could probably feed the planet. It's ridiculous. And people need to stop being selfish, stop being greedy, and start using their brains and doing what's good for the whole. It's kind of oddly enough, it's kind of like being a collective. Right? Think of the Borg from Star Trek. They're an extreme of that. But a mild form of that, a small percentage of collectivism, where we recognize that we have enough wealth and resources to support the body whole, there's no reason not to, except pure greed and selfishness. Self-reflect. Look in the mirror and think, who does it hurt to lift people out of poverty? Who does it hurt to have universal health care? We could have we could give every single person over 18 in this country $1,000 a month for the next 4 years for the amount of money we spent on this pandemic. That would lift 100% of the country out of poverty. Show me a downside to that. Don't invent some bullshit downside. Really sit down and think about it and explain to me where the downside is of lifting every single human being in this country out of poverty. Any downside I can think of is just blown away and shadowed by the upsides. I cannot think of a downside that is larger than the upside. I can't think of one. I mean, no more poverty, universal health care. Show me the downsides. Explain to me the downsides. Don't polarize the issue and cherry pick issues and points and place those points in a very specific tree of decisions that gets you the result you want. Stop trying to adjust the narrative. Apply it nationwide and show me the downsides. Show me the downsides that outweigh the upsides. I mean, we have actual data that says violent crime is race agnostic. It is straight up the middle, even across the board between white and black. But you know what isn't even across the board? Poverty. And do you know what violent crime absolutely disproportionately affects? Poverty. You get rid of poverty, you also get rid of most of our violent crime. I mean, end the drug war, end the war on drugs, and eliminate poverty, and have universal health care, and the ridiculously low crime rate this country already has today would seem violent and barbaric compared to what we would have. There's no downside unless you're the 1%. That is a pretty big downside. Just something to think about.